Hello everyone, this is Abdul Samad Shah from Spire podcast. Welcome back to the third episode of Spire podcast. In this today podcast, we have Chelsea Cohen from Sauce Talk. Uh, Previously, she was also known for content writing, but here today we have her for Sauce Talk, and we will be discussing how we can optimize the inventory, which is very ignored topic to be honest in the Amazon space. So, but very important because without inventory you can't run the business. So let's welcome Chelsea, and please.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. You're spot on. When you have no inventory, you're basically out of business. So
Exactly.
it's very vital, and it touches every single aspect of a seller's business.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so Chelsea, you can go ahead with your presentation or how you want to talk about the topic, and I will keep disturbing
hmm
you throughout the session.
Sounds great. Okay, great. Yeah, I'd love to start when we're talking about inventory. A lot of it, I've been talking a lot about fees and how inventory affects the fees and how you can approach inventory from the perspective of how do we strategize to make and keep more money. So that's kind of what we'll dive into is specifically how are the fees affected and impacted, and how do we actually make smart decisions in that way.
Yeah, that's good.
So I can jump in. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. So we call it proven strategies to save thousands in FBA fees, and so we'll go through each of the fees, and then we'll talk about what can you do to actually, if you can't reduce the fees, maybe you can avoid them, maybe you can reduce them, or maybe you can do things to offset them so that even if you have to pay fees on one side, there are other ways of saving fees on another portion of your business to help to improve profit. So when it comes to getting inventory management wrong, and more specifically, not having a forward view of your inventory, right? Just looking at your business from today, looking at your business from what happened in the past, and not forecasting into the future what is going to happen, you can get into a lot of trouble. And we saw that in November, right? We saw a lot of people posting, they had $25,000 in storage fees taken by Amazon, $26,000. They had were a lot of people who were saying they were shocked by these fees, but the fees are very predictable if you actually forecast for them. So sellers who are making a lot of money, if Amazon can take $25,000 from your account, you're obviously making a lot of money. It's important to predict that. And so that's what we've been doing inside of, the software, and also teaching how to use Amazon reporting to do some of that prediction and to understand your business better. Um, when we talk about inventory, the first thought that people have is obviously storage fees, right? If we have a bunch of inventory sitting there, we're going to be incurring a lot of storage fees. Now, when we go into fees, we like to look at, there's a different fees, right? We have fulfillment fees. We now have low inventory level fees, peak storage fees. We have fees for multi-channel, for removal, for, inventory age. There are all of these fees, and there's a lot of changes that took place. But the general point is that we want to be able to prevent the fees, and the only way that we can do that is by forecasting for fees. So we're doing what we call fee prevention forecasting, looking at not just, what do I have in stock now, but based on my sales and how slowly or quickly something is selling, I can actually predict how long it's going to be sitting at Amazon, and at what point it's going to um, cost me a lot of money. right? With the fee structures, your inventory is sitting there. Amazon's going to charge you a lot of money if it's sitting there for 6 months or it's sitting there for 9 months. We'll get into some of the specifics on how does Amazon charge those fees. But the general idea is, and you'll see here in this graph, we see a huge spike. And a lot of people will notice either right here or when it's actually hitting, which is what we talked about. We want to be able to know here or earlier that we've got this happening, because if we know 3-4 months in advance, we can strategize to make sure that that doesn't happen, right?
Exactly.
As far as the fee that is should be tracked most is the aged inventory fee, because that has a huge negative impact. The longer you keep inventory sitting at Amazon, they start charging you. They start charging you at 180 days, and then the fees escalate every 30 days until you actually sell that inventory. So
Okay.
there's actually a report, and it's my favorite report. And I've been teased for saying that I have a favorite Amazon report, but it has so much data. If you look at this, this is an Excel spreadsheet, and you can see how much data it has because the alphabet is doubling up on itself. So we've got this huge report, and most people haven't even seen it, right? This is the path. You go to reports, fulfillment, inventory, and then it's called the FBA inventory report. And it's actually in the inventory section, you have to click the more tab. So it opens up. So it's actually kind of hidden, and a lot of people don't know about it. And even if they knew about it, a lot of people don't know how to read it, right? So if you look at this, quantity to be charged, AIS, which is aged inventory surcharge, and then they have the different buckets, because each of these buckets represents a different rate, right? A different fee that's going to be charged. So this is very valuable. If you download this report, this is very valuable. It shows you how many units for each ASIN is and what their age is, so that you know what the fees are going to be. And then once you know the units, you also look at what's called the item volume, which is how many cubic feet is that single unit, a single unit of that ASIN, how much, what size is it? Because Amazon looks at your number of units, looks at your cubic feet, and then applies a specific fee rate. And that's how you come up with these numbers of how much are you going to be charged this month for those particular fees. So you take this report, and when we get into it, the biggest impact, right? We obviously don't want to keep inventory over this 180 days, because that's when your aged inventory fees start, which is 6 months essentially. So
Yeah.
at 6 months, you are going to be charged on top of your normal storage fees. You're going to be charged 50 cents per cubic foot. And then the next 30 days, $1, and then $1.50. But at 9 months, it jumps from $1.50 to $5.45 per cubic foot, which is very drastic, right? So we want to try to keep us within this lower range, right? This area costs us a lot of money. This area, we can see how many units are about to jump into this section, the $5.45 section. So if I were to download this report, the first thing I want to do is look at, do I have anything that's over 1 year old? And then I would work on, maybe do a sale, maybe drop a price, maybe liquidate the product. It just depends on what is the best choice. And then once I've gotten through all of these, I really want to look at, how do I prevent this from jumping into that 9 months? So it gives you an idea of what the risks are within your business before they hit. So to do the math, and just to get an idea of how dramatic this can be from 1 month to the next, this is the area where I'm charged $1.50 per cubic foot. And then I look at, what is that? I have 345 units. and I multiply it by my cubic feet, and then the rate is $1.50. So for these units, I'm paying almost $47, which is not great, but it's not the end of the world.
Mm.
The next month, that same amount of inventory is going to be almost $170 for the same amount of inventory. So we can see from 1 month to the next the major impact that can make. So we want to have the foresight to be able to plan to prevent that from happening as much as possible. So that's aged inventory, and this is something inside of our software we put together because this is, it's complicated, right? We project it out. This will get you there from the perspective of you download the list every single month, right? You want to download that list. You want to get into that plan, clean up anything that you have that's currently aged over 9 months, aged over 6 months, and then create a system where you are no longer getting yourself in hot water, right? How can you maintain your inventory at selling at a good pace to be able to even prevent any aged inventory fees? And then just a kind of a real quick tip, if you do have items that are very slow sellers and they've been aged over a year, and they have had no sales for the last 6 months, Amazon's going to automatically remove that inventory. This is not a common thing, but we have worked with a seller, sellers in the past who've had this, and one of the sellers had, probably 2 dozen ASINs that were in this category. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can opt out so that Amazon doesn't automatically remove your inventory. You can make a sale so that all of a sudden, you don't have 0 sales in that last 6 months. And then you could also liquidate or remove those items. Removal, that's what they're doing anyway, but liquidation could give you some cash back so that you're not just paying to have the inventory removed. You're actually attempting to get Amazon to liquidate it so that you can get a little bit of money back instead of just being charged.
So, for such items, do you recommend a 3PL or you still recommend like Amazon warehouse? And secondly, my question was that uh, do 3PL also charge the same way Amazon does? Like, do they also charge based on the inventory age?
Generally, no. I think that some do when it's over a year. For example, they might charge long-term storage over a year. It's not anything near what Amazon charges. So generally, if you're storing inventory, storing it at a 3PL is recommended, and just kind of trickling it in will be more cost effective for you. All right. So yeah, so that's the aged inventory. And this is a case study. So we've been working with clients on projecting out their fees, assessing, and looking out, 8 to 12 months in advance based on their historical sales data, the forecast. Because a lot of sellers can forecast based on their current sales, their, say rolling 60 days or whatever they're looking at, or their seasonal sales, right? Their history for the last year. And they'll project out, what am I going to be selling? How much do I need to order within the next 3 months, or for Christmas or whatever it is? They can project their sales. So if they can project their sales, and if we know fee policy, we're able to project the fees as well. So that's something that we've been doing with some of our clients and we're going to be launching a new program in the next couple of weeks for our clients to be able to project those fees and figure out what is the financial impact of making different decisions, right? What's going to happen if I don't do anything different than I'm doing right now? What if I remove it? What if I decide to do a big discount and sell it, liquidate it? Each one of those decisions has its own financial impact. And so being able to look at all of that data in one place to make decisions on a per ASIN basis based on what's going to make the most financial sense. So this is an example of one of those scenarios where we looked at a series of products and saw, and this is a large catalog, and we're able to isolate four products that were driving about $50,000 worth of fees over the next 12 months. So if these products were retired, they were slow selling, they were costing a lot, they were very much aged, and we were going to consistently see these fees incurring. So, get rid of those products, liquidate them, maybe get some cash back, and save $50,000 in the process. So that's just goes to show you the impact that you can have when you're projecting out these fees and you make decisions based on actually looking at the information.
Exactly, yeah, I think it's great. Like utilizing the same $50,000 in advertising, or you can buy more inventory with that and then generate more
Yep.
profit with the saved money.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's why when you look at it, I like to look at it from the net impact, the net dollar impact, because you're saving, and sometimes we'll look at 3 months. So maybe something that's $50,000 for the next 8 months might be only, $15,000 in 3 months. And so say, okay, well, if it was $15,000 in the next 3 months, but I liquidated or I did a flash sale and I recovered $7,000 in cash back in my pocket, then, really the net would be 15 plus that seven. So you would be $22,000 that you keep in your pocket because you have the cash from the flash sale and you avoid, Amazon taking all that money in fees out of your account.
Yeah, that sounds
So yeah,
very
it's
great. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's looking differently at your business, right? Not just, how much can I make, but it's what can I do with that money, right?
exactly. Yeah, so somewhere I read a quotation that when you start making money, then making further money is easy, but
Mhm.
saving your income from that part, it's very difficult.
Yes, exactly.
Sellers have to focus on the saving part as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because, if you're doing high volume, and we've seen this, doing high volume, you shave off ten cents per unit can have a huge impact, right? And
Exactly.
that's, there's a lot of focus on driving more revenue. But if you're driving more revenue and you're saving 10 cents on every unit, every single sale that you're making and the revenue that you're driving is going to be worth more.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I like to look at is what are the different methods that we have to fix one of these situations where we've got aged inventory, maybe we've got peak storage fees, and peak storage fees are when it comes to the fourth quarter, when Amazon is getting ready for Black Friday, for Cyber Monday, and for the holidays, they start charging you a lot more in storage fees. So what you're paying in the first 3 quarters of the month is less than what you're going to pay for that last quarter. So that comes to the point of, well, how do we strategize to reduce the financial burden when it comes to Q4, right?
Yeah.
We call it retiring a product. Well, you can retire a product, or you can um, find ways to format your supply chain in a different way. And a lot of it has to do with what your business does, right? How your business operates. We've got people who we've worked with, they have summer products or back to school products, and back to school products, they're right before fourth quarter. They're usually, um, uh, August, September, and then October comes about. And if
Yeah.
they don't sell, if there's inventory they don't sell, it sits there for fourth quarter. They know it's
Yeah.
not going to sell very much. And they know that they've got, back to school after Christmas, January, February. is another sales period, but how can you avoid having inventory left over at Amazon when they've got these huge peak storage fees? So it's just figuring out ways to leverage things like Amazon warehousing and distribution, for example, or a 3PL, where there is no peak storage fee. It's same storage year round. Can you coordinate a way to send what you need to send into FBA, and then by the time your sales season stops, your inventory is not sitting at FBA, it's sitting in another location. So it's one of those, send a bunch of inventory into FBA up front, and then as the season peters off, start dripping smaller and smaller amounts in to avoid that, right?
Exactly. And I think, yeah, as you mentioned earlier, that uh, source stock helps in uh, making the calculations for a specific time period, for example, for quarter four or for back to school season. So I think, yeah, it's great to use softwares like this for
Mm-hmm.
such time specific products or season specific products.
Yeah, exactly. Having to use, past data to be able to truly forecast, because I might look at something and I look at, like 60 days, but if you have huge sales spikes coming into a season, the last 60 days doesn't matter because, you sell very heavily in, let's say summer, for example. So it is important to track your data if you have a seasonal business to use past data from last year.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that we look at, and this is something that we're going to be launching soon inside of SoStock, is how do we compare the effects of what is going to happen within our business based on the different things that we do for inventory.
Mm.
If we have, let's say, looking at a 3-month projection, we say, okay, in the next 3 months, these specific products are going to incur $9,800 in fees, right? We're just projecting it based on the aged inventory fees. And then we say, okay, if we remove this inventory, how much is it going to cost us? Because every single product is going to be charged a fee based on Amazon's structure. They look at the size and the weight of a product, and then they charge you per unit. And this can be really expensive if you've got a large product or a heavy product. And so it's important to know, what am I going to be charged? And then, does it even make sense to remove it? Right? It only makes sense generally to remove it if you're going to sell it on another sales channel. If you have somewhere to put it, you have somewhere to send it, and then also, if you're going to keep selling it on Amazon, you don't want to have you want to keep about 4 months of stock still inside of FBA, because Amazon's not going to let you send inventory for the next 90 days after you remove that inventory. And that's for removals and for liquidations. That's why we have these asterisks here. It's important to understand that if you're going to keep selling on Amazon, you do want to hold 4 months worth of stock. Uh, Another thing to point out is, when you have aged inventory fees, like we saw with the other chart, not all of the units are aged at the same rate. So I could have 1,000 units that are sitting at Amazon, and maybe only 300 are incurring high aged inventory fees, and the other 700 are, let's say, 90 days old. They're not costing me a lot of money, so I don't want to remove all 1,000 units. Maybe I just want to remove the 300 that are causing me a lot of fees, right?
Exactly.
So we have removals, and we see that removals are going to cost more than the fees themselves. So if I want to remove them because I know that they can be sold somewhere else, I might do that. But a lot of the time, removal isn't a good option for people. Then we have liquidate, and I can get into, in another slide, I'll get into how is liquidation actually calculated. We have liquidation, and we look at the net savings. Right? Amazon's going to take this inventory, sell it to someone in liquidation. They're going to get between 5 and 10% return, and then Amazon's going to take a referral fee because Amazon loves to, tack their fees on. So they're going to take a portion of the money that they get back and they're going to charge you a processing fee. So once all of that shakes out, we want to know how much money am I getting back? Right. So if we say, okay, for this particular scenario, I'm getting between $580 and $3,580. When we look at the savings, like I mentioned, the net impact, the net savings, we look at adding the cash to the savings. And so the net return is between $10,000 and $13,000 rather than it just being, this amount. It's this amount plus whatever we're saving. Um, couple of things with liquidation. So besides not being able to send inventory for 90 days, it's also not guaranteed. So if Amazon can't find someone to purchase it, then you're not going to be able to liquidate it. You also may be net negative. If your product is very low priced, but it's a larger product, there is a chance that you won't be getting money back. You'll actually be paying. It's rare, but it is a possibility, and so doing that calculation is important. The other
Exactly.
thing to consider with liquidation is that you're sending it to someone who wants to make money off of it. So a liquidator could legally start selling on your listing, and he's paid a lot less than you have. So that's a risk. So it's not often something that you'd want to do unless you're not going to sell the product again. You're going to liquidate everything. Otherwise, you could have someone with your own inventory using it against you and selling it. And because it is your actual inventory, it is completely legitimate that they would be able to do that. And then the last one, this is the option that most people would like, which would be to market the inventory. So say within the next 3 months, I'm going to incur those fees, but I'm just going to be, marketing very heavily. I'm going to discount it 20%, or I'm going to drive, ads or do a flash sale and market this inventory. So that can be, you'll want to do significant savings. The target would be to sell through all of the aged inventory in 3 months. You're going to incur these fees. So we say, if I get $30,000 back, but it still costs me that $9,800, my net savings is $20,000, right? I get $20,000 back instead of $30,000, but $20,000 in your pocket is much better than these other scenarios if you feel like that is a goal that you can hit. If it's dead product, it hasn't done anything, then, it may not be the best option, but that should always be the first option.
Yeah, that's great, I think.
What's that?
Yeah, I was saying, yeah, it's great, like strategizing about your inventory with this approach.
Yeah, to just be strategic and understanding what the fees are, and then you can make decisions based on actual data. And a lot of this data is not very clear, so that's one of the reasons we've been pulling it all together and creating dashboards to make it a lot clearer. Because most people's um, go to is to because it's not clear and it's not easy, it's to do nothing about it and just focus on the part of the business that they can control, which is the advertising of their best sellers.
Exactly, and yeah,
Um,
that's why statistics and calculations are there. Sometimes we
mhm,
don't know the exact outcome, so we use the
mhm,
probability and the calculations.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all math. It's just a matter of pulling it together.
Exactly.
So yeah, so real quick, the liquidations aspect, you have the fees between the liquidation costs you get back between 5 and 10%. So in this scenario, if I had a $40 product, I would get back between $2 and $4 is what the liquidator would pay. And then Amazon will take 15% of that. So now I only have $1.70 or $3.40, right? Just in kind of depending on if Amazon can get a high or a low recovery. And then Amazon charges a removal fee on top of that. Here's the removal fee chart. And so what I'm end up with is between $1.35 and $3.05. So my total recovery is, between $1,350 and $3,000 for this 1,000 units. So it's just a quick kind of understanding of how do the liquidations work based on Amazon's policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as far as the actual strategy on a timeline, I like to look at on a monthly basis, what should I be doing? And so first and foremost, Amazon's fees, they charge aged inventory fees starting on the 15th of each month. The 15th of the month, whatever you have sitting there, they're going to charge a fee. Right? So the 16th of the month, you would say, okay, the 15th happened. I couldn't do anything about that. Now, the 16th of the month, I download my report for aged inventory, the FBA inventory report that we talked about before. I'm going to download that report. I'm going to look at the ASINs that are in the high range of age. And then I'm going to try to market them. I'm going to do a flash sale or increase ads or do a price drop and try to market it. And then every single week, I'm going to track that. We like to look at 2-day, 7-day, and 15-day sales velocity, right? We have a daily sales velocity where you say, what is my daily sales velocity based on my last 2 days of sales, based on my last 7 days of sales? And so what this does is as you're ramping up those sales, is there a difference between the last 2 days velocity and the last 15 days, right? If I have, I've been selling 2 units a day and the 15-day average is 2 units a day, and then the 2-day average starts to become 6 units a day. I can see because of the difference in those two velocities that my sales are actually working. But if I have 2 sales a day on average, and then the 2-day is still 2 sales a day, it's not working. Maybe I'll drop the price some more. I'll do whatever I can to sell through as much inventory as possible. And then on the 14th of the month, I'll say, okay, this sale's working. I have inventory that's going to be charged. I'm going to take that fee. I know I'm going to be charged on the 15th for this, but I'm okay with it because the sale is working. Right? I found a good pace. We're going to sell out. We reduce the amount of risk and liability that we have in terms of the fees. So we'll just keep marketing it. Or maybe it wasn't working and you say, okay, I'm going to liquidate this ASIN. I'm going to liquidate the 300 aged units in this ASIN, and you do it before the 15th, right? So by 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the 14th, you can make that decision, place those orders, removal order, disposal order, or liquidation order, and that locks in your order so that you're not going to be charged fees. Even though it's still sitting at Amazon, because you've placed that order, now Amazon has to do something with that, so they're not going to charge you the aged inventory fees. So that's kind of the general on a monthly basis. This is how you can be strategic about planning your marketing and your liquidation to optimize based on Amazon's own aged inventory schedule.
Yeah, I think that's great strategies.
Yeah. And then we'll get to, I'm not sure where we're at with time and how much you want me to get into. I am talking about Amazon warehousing and distribution a little bit. And then I believe I cover a little bit about resizing. So I know that I think we're at doing maybe 45 minutes or so that we're looking at. So yeah, so I think I have enough time to go through some of these. So warehousing and distribution, I'm sure that a lot of people, if not everyone, knows by now about Amazon warehousing and distribution. It's essentially a program where they're your 3PL and they send inventory automatically into FBA for you, and their rates are different. So if we compared Amazon warehousing and distribution to FBA, there are a couple of differences. One is that the fees are a lot lower. Storage fees are 48 cents per cubic foot versus 78 cents at FBA. Amazon warehousing and distribution does not have peak storage. So you can see that in that last month, the savings holding your inventory at Amazon warehousing and distribution is 80%. You do have to keep in mind that if you're selling rapidly, you want to make sure that you're not in a position where Amazon can't send your inventory fast enough. So there are some kind of there is some kind of give and take, but like our scenario when you have inventory for summer, for example, you want to get to the point where your inventory during the holiday season is sitting here or sitting here rather than incurring $2.40 per cubic foot. And then there's something called base versus integrated. Amazon charges a per box fee. So they have storage fees, then they have processing fee, which is every single box that you send is going to be charged a fee. And then they have transportation fee, which is a per cubic foot. With the per box fee, since it's per box, the more units per box you have, the less it's going to cost each unit. So if I only have, 2 products per box, I'm going to pay $1.25 in processing fees for each of those units. But if I have 10 units per box, then I'm only going to pay 25 cents. So more units per box, units per carton is going to save you significant amounts of money. So that's first and foremost. And then you have integrated rates, which Amazon has logistics. So they'll ship your product. They have different, services, partner carrier, the different services that they have, and they're referred to as supply chain by Amazon. All of that, all of those different services, when you're using them to a certain extent based on some rules they have set up, you're going to get reduced rates on all of these. So instead of 48 cents per cubic foot for storage, you're paying 36 cents. Processing fee goes to $2.13. You save another 15 cents on your transportation fees. So using more of Amazon's services actually benefits for for your profitability. May not be the right move for you, so you have to look at kind of your business as a whole, but it is an option that a lot of sellers are starting to take. Some of the perks that Amazon likes to give you incentives to use their services. When you're sending to Amazon warehousing and distribution, you don't have inbound placement fees, you don't have aged inventory at AWD, and you don't have those peak storage. If you're using replenishment, the replenishment services, you avoid the low inventory level fee, and you avoid storage overage fees. I wanted to just quickly go through. We don't have to talk too much about it unless it's something that's of interest to you. But there is the low inventory level fee, and just making people aware of the low inventory level fee. Keeping your inventory above 28 days of historical supply is important. And so this is just the chart that shows what the fees are going to be. Nowadays, there is in the FBA inventory dashboard, you can look at the historical days of supply and the low inventory risks within your business. So there is that. We have it within our So Stocked platform, and then there also is the Amazon dashboard, the inventory dashboard. You can find that information in there. As far as what we have found if you have a flash sale and you sell a bunch of inventory for Prime Day, for example, you're not going to generally be at risk of low inventory fees if you've been steadily keeping your inventory above that 28 days. So we like to say between 35 days and let's say 75 or 90 days. You're going to have, when you have a flash sale, it's not going to heavily impact. So you don't have to really worry that a big sale for a day or a couple of days is not going to be risky. For seasonal products, we do have some risks. So if we look at between the start and the end of a season, you get into kind of a range that is a bit risky, but you don't end up because you have a longer range for 90 days, you're going to be kept safe, right? Because Amazon looks at your short term and your long term historical days of supply. And what they're doing is they're saying, okay, you generally have had enough inventory, so we're not going to, to fault you. And then when you get midway through your period of time, your sales season, you're safe as well. But as you start to move further and further out, about 2 months out away from your sales season, then you can get into the point where you're incurring the low inventory fees at that point. So that just kind of gives you a pattern of what to watch for.
Mhm.
Um, So this is just to show you where you can find that historical dashboard. So you go to inventory and you go to FBA inventory dashboard, and then it's called historical days of supply, and it gives you the number. Anything under 28 days is going to be incurring fees. So then it'll show you the breakdown of how did Amazon actually come up with these answers. So it's just something that's handy. And then there's also within the FBA inventory report, which is the same report for the aged inventory, you have historical days of supply. And then they've added some new ones where you've got, is this it? They've added some new ones. It'll show you if your product is actually currently being charged or not. So there's a couple of new columns in there. So you can see, am I being charged aged inventory fees? And it's a good idea to have this report because then you can sort by it and you can look at a large catalog pretty quickly. Um, I think that we're going to, let me just go through this quickly. If you have one of the new things is Amazon. If you have, Amazon deals, they're going to give you some leeway where if you've got a big Prime Day deal, they're not going to charge you for the 4 weeks after that deal. And then if your product is selling less than 20 units over a 7-day period, they're not going to charge you either. So there are some ways where Amazon just waives those fees.
Mhm.
I think I'm going to jump into this one real quick, unless you wanted to jump in there.
Sure.
Okay, so just to kind of end this off, if you are not able to get out of specific fees, there are ways to start thinking about your product differently. And so, for example, here's a product that was resized, the exact same product, and it was condensed into a very much a smaller product, right? The container was much smaller. It still looks nice, but it was a lot smaller. And the savings actually was 62 cents per unit in fulfillment fees because it went into a lower size tier. And so, based on this particular product, it adds up to $52,000 a year in fulfillment fee savings. So it can have a huge impact. And even if you get into just the one lower size tier, we do studies where we can run a catalog. We actually have a free tool for that where you can look at your product and you can plug in the data and find out what will it take to get into the lower range and how much am I going to save. So we've been able to find in different accounts, for example, this one over $90,000 in savings over the entire catalog. So that's something that we do, and we will offer that at the end to be able to get we call it a profit audit, to look at your catalog and see, are there opportunities if I were to just shrink down my product a little. Or Amazon, sometimes they'll bump you into a higher tier and you can just ask them, hey, remeasure my product shouldn't be in this high tier, remeasure that product. And once they do the remeasure, sometimes they'll put it back into the lower tier, and then
Mhm.
you can sometimes get them to pay you back for the last 90 days of fees, of excess fees they charged you.
Exactly, yeah. I remember one case of my client. It
Mm-hmm.
was a dog-related product, and there were only color variations. And for one specific variation, they were charging higher FBA fee. And when I checked, they measured the dimensions differently. So I opened case with them and told them that This is the same thing. It's only color variation. So please correct it and also reimburse me the charge amount for the sold units. And
Yeah.
they reimbursed some $900.
Mm,
Client was very
yeah.
happy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So those are the things, keeping an eye out for them, kind of auditing your account over time. And SoStock is a Carbon 6 company. So Carbon 6 is a software suite, and we have there's a tool called Seller Investigators, and Seller Investigators will keep an eye out for that. So you can plug in your data, and this is a a free portion. So even if they do reimbursement, so getting Amazon to give you money back on fees that they charged you, but beyond just the reimbursement side of things, there's a free tool. So whether you use the reimbursement service or not, you can plug in your data for the free tool, and they'll scan and they'll see if Amazon bumps you into a higher tier, and so that you get an alert that it's happened when it happens, and then you can go you know and petition Amazon to change it back so that you don't miss out on that and you don't have to notice 6 months later that they've just taken a bunch of your money.
That's great. That's great. Can you tell about the software you mentioned?
Mhm.
If FBA investigator, or which one you mentioned?
The seller investigators.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so seller
So they,
investigators, yeah, they'll go in and they'll, if Amazon owes you fees for inventory errors, missing inventory, um, you know resizing, returns, if items have should have, they should have been returned, you were charged for a return, but then the item never arrived back. So there's different things where Amazon should charges fees, and then you shouldn't be charged those fees, right? They charge the fees and then something else happens, and then you should be getting that money back from Amazon, but they're not as good at following through with that, so they need that little nudge. So that's what seller investigators does, is finds those opportunities where Amazon owes you money, and then goes and opens cases for you and follows them up. And even if you've got um, other services that do this, or you've got the your own system, they've been able to supplement that, where they find whoops supplement that, where they find additional money, and then it's just you can go back a few years to find some of that money. So they'll be able to usually find more money that has been missed.
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. uh,
Uh, I will share a link to this software in the video description. So,
mhm.
guys, you can check the software and it's free.
Yep.
If it's not totally free, then the investigation part is free.
Yeah, exactly. The investigation is free, and then you can decide whether you want to have them help you to recover it, and then you would only pay for what they recovered. So you would be getting money back into your account before you ever saw, any cost. And then
Great.
the part that where you plug in your dimensions, and they warn you that Amazon's changed your dimensions, that part is completely free. Whether you use anything else in the software, that's completely free.
That's cool.
Yeah. um we'll go over this last one very briefly. And then we'll get to the free offer. But there's a returns processing fee that was released pretty recently, and I think they started it in June, so a couple of days ago. Amazon, they say if you have a higher than normal returns rate, right? Let's say they set a threshold for each category, and let's say your threshold is 8%. They say most of your competitors, their threshold is below 8%. You're above 8%. So let's say you're above 8%. That means that you have to stay within that range. And if you go above that range, we're going to charge you extra fees. So they go, let's
Mm.
start with June. In June, you shipped 1,000 units. And then in June, of those 1,000 units, 40 units were returned. If your threshold is 80 units, because out of 1,000, 8% is your 80 units, you're still within the range of the threshold. But Amazon will look at the next 3 months and say, of all of these people who received a product, some of them may send it back after that, after June. So they keep adding it up. They say 40 units, and then another 35 came back in June that you sold in July that you sold in June, because they know every single order that came in June. It's up to 75. Now you're up to 75. Then you go into August and 40 are returned. Now you're up to 115 total returns when the threshold was 80. So you're over the threshold by 35 units. So this is the whole calculation, and we're just talking about June. And then so in September, that's when you get your bill. And they say you've got 35 units. Based on this product, we're going to charge you $4.01 in returns processing fee. These are very hefty per unit fees. And so those $35 cost you $140 in returns processing fees for June. So that's how it breaks down. The policy was written in a very complicated way, so it was hard for people to understand, but that's how it breaks down. The main message is to keep your returns low, to look at the returns processing, the returns dashboard, to see if you've got any trouble, and then to make sure that you're looking at your negative reviews and you're looking at your inspections company so that you can reduce the amount of returns based on the feedback that you're getting, right? And some you may have to stop selling them. Some maybe it's not, they're not good products to sell, and that is something that your returns rate and your reviews should be able to tell you.
Okay.
I think the last piece is just going into what we have to offer, which is the inventory profit audit that we have, and this is something that we do for free. And so we'll look at the stock out losses, right? We can look at your, you plug in your API, so we'll pull data into look at how much did you potentially lose in stock outs, right? Based on your sales, if you lost any sales due to stock outs, the inventory risks. So being able to see the aged inventory, right? Those graphs that we saw before, being able to see what products do you have at risk of incurring those aged fees and how much and which ASINs are in the most danger. And then when we talked about resizing your product and finding those opportunities to reduce your fulfillment fees, we will run your entire catalog on that too. So you'll be presented an inventory profit audit. If you decide that you want to, to work with the software or work with our team, that is something that you can do. But regardless, the profit audit is completely free, and we'll show you some of the areas maybe that you can improve in your business.
That's very cool, and thank you so much, Chelsea,
Mm-hmm.
for this
Great.
generous
Yep.
offer
Sounds good.
to my
Absolutely.
audience.
Thanks so much for having me.